Alrighty, this is the Polaris RZR S 1000. I'm going to try to give you guys a decent walk around, rolling around in a chair. Highlight logo. Rolling around in a chair. Doing a walk around isn't necessarily easy. I need to grow some extra arms. I'm going to give you guys a quick look, and I'll go around and try to keep it as brief as I can. I'll give you a quick summary on everything that's done to it. Alright, first and foremost, this is not a standard length S1000. Standard wheelbase on an S1000 is 79 inches. This has the high lifter, offset, and arched A-arms front and rear. See if I can drop you down where you can see that. Has the arched A-arms front and rear by high lifter, which adds an 1.5 inches front, 1.5 inches back. So now the wheelbase on this machine is 82 inches. Whenever I did the A-arms, I also did the Super Duty 300M ball joints. They are tension adjustable and greasable, which is nice. Has the ultra high molecular weight UHMW bushings on all four corners. Rides great. Has the Walker Evans springs, or Walker Evans shocks, excuse me. Has the Walker Evans shocks with the Racer Tech spring kit. I run my machines with no sway bars. I still have the sway bar if needed. But with this spring combination, it rides like a Cadillac. Handles phenomenally, jumps well. If you've ever driven a machine without the sway bars, you know the improvements you get. You can also see it has Super ATV turn signal kit, as well as my own custom camera, front and rear. These are wireless cameras, or Wi-Fi cameras, so they will stream to any tablet via Wi-Fi while you're driving. It's nice because I'm in a chair, so if it's woods and night, if I'm backing up on the side of a mountain, I don't have the trunk control to turn around real easy and look, or lean outside the vehicle, so it's nice to have the cameras front and back to see. Also has a full-size Champion 4,500 pound winch. This is quite a bit bigger than your standard UTV size winch. This is an automotive style winch. This was actually on a Ford Bronco for several years, pulling logs in the woods and everything. It also has a Master Pull 1,500 or 15,000 pound synthetic rope on it. It's very nice. You guys can see in some of my other videos if you check them out, I use the winch to load and unload this machine sometimes, so it just makes it nice having the synthetic. It's also on a custom built 2-inch receiver mount. This mount is bolted top, middle, and rear to the gussets at the center of the chassis. So it is removable if you need to, but it would be a pain because it was built together and bolted in as it was welded with that quick pin, and also has the quick connects on the winch cable, which makes it nice. So if you're washing your machine, you can take the winch off because synthetic rope isn't good to set and be wet. So I pull that off all the time. I also have it built, you can't see it, I have a snowplow that's on a 2-inch receiver, so I can switch my snowplow from my RZR to my mower in the wintertime, which makes it nice. Like I said, 4,500 pound winch. It's a beast. It's stronger than any 4,500 pound UTV winch you could ever find. Front and rear has EMP poly hard-coated windshield and back glass. They're both plexiglass, or both hard-coated poly, whatever they call them. Has a 22-inch light bar up type. I can't remember the size of it. Seismic mirrors, the aluminum housing, they compress if you hit a tree. They break in, pop them back out to where you had them. Whenever I got this machine, I got rid of all the decals on it. I had that one custom made just because it looks pretty badass for a chair symbol. You can also tell it has 38 by 10 by 14 inch Maxxis carnivores. I think these have 600 miles on them, still look brand new. And they are running on Method Racing 401 beadlock wheels. Now these are a 5x2 offset. You can also see that aluminum ring coming off the hub. I'll explain that. Whenever I did the offset arms, front and rear, it changes the geometry of your steering. So when you do that, you have to put steering stops on the rack because you'll hyperextend the steering rack or the axles or anything. The problem when you put the steering stops in is you lose your turning radius. It becomes like driving a boat. So what I did, the Super ATV steering stops that I bought to put on the rack, let's say if I can't remember the exact dimensions, but they were a heavy 3/8 inch thick, just rings that snapped over the rack to limit the steering. I ended up cutting those in half, so they're maybe an 1/8 inch wide now. But what that did is it still gave me steering stops, but it drastically reduced how much steering I lost. So it still has great steering, turning radius, and everything. The reason for the hubs, for the hub spacers, is because whenever it was at full turn in, let me unlock my brake here. Whenever I was at full turn, the inside of the tire would want to touch this spring. And so what I did is I had a set of 1/4 inch spacers built, and then I installed some longer studs. They're about 3/8 inch longer than factory. They're the same factory pitch. I can't remember if the XPs and all the S and the trail lineup have the same pitch of lug nut. I know the XPs have a longer stud, but this is what I replaced it with. It's a longer stud, it's heavy duty, hardened, so it counterbalances that 1/4 inch spacer I had. We don't have to worry about anything breaking. Let's see what else. Doors, you can see that. The cage, let me back up here. The cage has been cut and lowered 3.5 inches. Gives it a better look. When I did that, obviously I had to trim the back windshield, make all that fit. Anything else on the front? I forget. Oh yes. With the windshield wiper blade, you can see those little black dots on top of the hood. Those are actually windshield wiper squirters. I'll insert a picture here where you can see what's underneath. I have a full windshield washer system in there. That way when you're riding, you can wash the mud off. Up front is also a set of jumper cables that run from the back underneath the seat of the battery up through the chassis up to the front. That way if you're ever out riding and your buddy leaves his battery on or leaves his radio blaring when you stop and have a beer and somebody's battery dies, you don't have to pull the seat out to jump the battery. All you gotta do is pop the hood off. You can run up, hook jumper cables up to it, jump start your buddy, and back on your way. That'll take us to the Corbeau racing seats. These things are on another level. I've seen PRPs and I've sat in them. I've sat in some Simpsons that are very nice, but gosh, the price of a Simpson seat is out of this world. But these Corbeaus, me being in a chair, and the fact that whenever we go riding down Tennessee or West Virginia, I typically stay in my machine whenever we stop. We stop and have a beer, hang out, have lunch, something like that. I'm sitting in my machine for 8 hours if I'm riding. So I wanted the most comfortable seat I could possibly have. And Corbeau Racing is right on. You can see it's got the pass-through harnesses. These harnesses run through the seat and attach to the eyelets on the back, or quick attach. That way, if you do have to pull the seat out, you don't have to unbolt the harness. You can just pull those springs. Those latches slide off the eyelets, and they pull through the seat. You can pop the seat out. We'll go up front. We'll go over some of the interior features. Before I do that, though, as you can see in the background, and I'll insert some pictures now, I actually built my own cab enclosure. That's welded out of 3/8 or 1/4 inch square tube and some 1 inch flat steel, some angle iron, and then it has 1/8 inch thick clear table liner on top of it. But what I did, being as how I cut and lowered the cage 3.5 inches, you couldn't buy an aftermarket cage system for it. And so whenever I was looking at what I could do, I thought about buying an aftermarket and modifying it. And I didn't really feel comfortable with that because my biggest thing is whenever I put that on, I didn't want to have to worry about taking it off to haul. Like, that system is strong enough, I can run 85 mile an hour down the interstate and it doesn't move an inch. So that makes it nice. What brought me to telling you about that is this first thing on the door I'll show you. As you can see here, there is an eyelet with a cable and a ring on it. What that's for is so that way whenever the cab enclosure is on, I can still open the door without having to unzip anything on the cabin closure. It just makes everything more streamlined. Door still opens regularly. You can still use your hand on the inside. You can see all you have is that little bitty riser right there, if I can get it to focus. But anyways, that's how you can open the door in the wintertime. And it's nice if you're in a chair and you can't reach up. Like, I'm able to stand. I'm an incomplete injury, so I can stand up to open the doors and stuff. But it's still just nicer to be able to pull this. It opens. Another thing I'm sure you've noticed is there is a gas strut on this door that holds it open. So the reason for that, whenever I'm moving my chair, or even if I'm riding in the woods and we come to a stop and we're shooting a shit, these doors, as great as they are a pain in the ass whenever they keep hitting you and they keep closing. So that way, if you're parked on a side, if you're parked facing downhill, these struts actually help keep the door open. It makes it very, very nice. I'm surprised no one hasn't picked up on that yet. I know they make them for the X3. There's not many companies I found that made them for the RZR, so I made my own. It has PRP door bags with a knee brace, Pro Armor 2-inch harnesses with 5th point. You don't appreciate how, like, you think 4-point harnesses are good until you add that 5th point connection. I rip this thing pretty hard whenever I'm out riding, and the 4 points hold me in good, but the 5th point even makes the machine ride better because it keeps your butt in the seat, and with these Corbeau suspension seats, it's like heaven on earth. Here, as far as the hand controls, let's see if I can get this at an angle where everybody can see it. This has a set of Monarch, either A1 or 1A hand controls in them. They operate by rotating down for gas and pushing forward for brake. These are awesome because it makes it to where I actually have more throttle stability than my buddies if we're rock crawling or something. We'll go into that here in a little bit. You can see I have foot retaining straps in the bottom. Just make it nice because for me, being an incomplete injury, if I hit a bump or something, sometimes my toes will tap and they take off like crazy. So feet straps in there to help hold your feet in place. If this ends up going to somebody who doesn't need it, this stuff will be removed and will not be included. But we'll go over that later. Here's the heater I put in, the Super ATV turn signal kit, the Grant racing steering wheel with a custom spinner knob I made. And this has a 3-inch spacer with the adapter. That way, I like to set back further in the machine since I'm not using my feet to drive. So it just makes it nice, keeping that steering wheel close to you. It's also a D-shaped steering wheel, so it has that flat on the bottom, makes it easier to get in and out. Here's some of the switches. See, the radio is hardwired in to where you can have the ignition off and still run it. This is the Wi-Fi camera, so turns the front one on, back one on. See your standard switches and all your lights on the side. I'm trying to think of anything else. I also have a quick connect fire extinguisher up top, a GMSR radio. So I can see the camera there. Oops, there we go. Fog or dome light, and I built that plastic housing for like an infotainment center. It has the controller for the Boss audio system. It has a 2-plug USB port, charging port in it, and so you can charge your tablet and anything else you need to if it's up top. And it also has a RAM mount for your tablet. For that, you can put an 8-inch tablet. You can put whatever size tablet you want to on that. Let's see here. On the keychain, there, that orange plug, that orange button plug. That orange button is for the windshield washer squirters. That fob on the keychain is for the wireless controller for the winch. You can check out some of my videos of how I load and unload this thing. That wireless winch makes it very nice. I'm going to go over, if anybody knows anything about aftermarket seats, whenever you put an aftermarket seat on, it usually raises 2 to 3 inches, just out of the seat base and everything. What I did, because I didn't want to lose my seat height, I didn't want to increase my seat height. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I ended up making my own set of custom seat mounts for the bottom. That way it kept the suspension seat as low as possible, so the seat height is actually pretty close, if not a little bit lower in in the rear at least, to the factory seats. Just little things like that make a world of difference whenever you get to modifying stuff. Let's see what else we got. Went over the wheels and tires, the A-arms. We'll move here to the rear. Okay, let's talk about the motor and the drivetrain. In one of my videos, you'll see when I went to West Virginia a couple years ago, 5 minutes into the trip, got a couple miles back here in the mountains and threw the carrier bearing, which I never really knew was a problem on the S900s and S1000s. But I know it's a huge problem on the XPs. They throw carrier bearings constantly. I am the 1 in a million chance of the person who goes through a pretty deep little puddle, catches a twig, and it wedged into the rubber housing that retains the bearing for the carrier bearing and slowly worked itself out. You can check out that video and hear it. It's god-awful. So anyways, I pulled the drive shaft that night. Ended up running 2-wheel drive that whole trip, no problem. But regardless, whenever I got back home and I rebuilt the drive shaft, I had all the drive shaft out, I pulled everything out. I put Spicer greasable U-joints in it. And then whenever I was looking into replacing the carrier bearing, I noticed, I know it's a common thing on the XPs, and the big thing everybody wants to do is put a billet carrier bearing on it. And it's bulletproof and all this, yada, yada, yada. Which, yeah, it's nice. But the reason why the factory has a metal housing with a rubber carrier that holds the bearing on the drive shaft is to eliminate driveline vibration. Every machine I've rode in that has a billet carrier bearing chatters like crazy. So what I did is I bought a new OEM carrier bearing with a metal housing, you know, that retains the rubber. And on that rubber, there are channels in the casting. And what that does is it helps let that rubber bend and move to help absorb some of the vibration. So what I did is I drilled holes around that metal retainer and filled it full of silicone. All those little channels inside that rubber sleeve are full of silicone to where it makes it's a more rigid rubber. And what it did is it allowed it to still vibrate if it needs to, but you don't feel any of that vibration through the driveline. And I did that, gosh, 800 or 900 miles ago, and it's been solid ever since, so that was a big improvement. On the transmission, this has a Dalton clutch kit. It's clutched for 30-inch tall tires, and it also has the Dalton helix in the secondary, which makes it nice. It has a Hunter Works thick and quiet belt. It's just a great combination. I can crawl rocks, I can run the piss out of it. This thing is perfect, never had a problem. I actually still have the OEM belt. I'll insert this picture of the toolbox in here right now. You can see it. That's still the factory belt that came on it. I just upgraded everything because I like to make things better. You can also see that shiny tube right there. That is a velocity intake tube that runs up to the airbox. This has a Power Tune Stage 3 custom tune done by Ryan at Power Tune, if I remember his name right. Custom tune built for this machine. I called him because I read a lot of good things in the forums about what he did and the work he did. So I called him, talked to him, told him what my machine was built, what I had done, clutch weights, all that stuff. And I told him where I rode. The Stage 3 tune for the S1000 at the crank, the factory S1000 motor makes 100 horsepower. This claims it makes 117 now. It's a pretty big gain for a naturally aspirated motor, but I will say I've watched some of his videos. The way this factory ECU limits the throttle body on the factory programming, it's real. Like, this feels like 117 horsepower. With that, he recommended that velocity intake tube. And with the Stage 3 tune is usually built for out west in the sand, the dunes and stuff. But I told him I live in the Mideast. You know, I go to Tennessee, I go to West Virginia, I ride in the mud, the snow, and the rain. So with that Stage 3 tune, they recommend an open air filter. But I obviously didn't want that with all the bud and stuff. So what he recommended was for me to drill out the factory air box. I've already ran a unifilter. I've ran unifilters for years on all the Flint machines I've owned. But he told me what to do the factory air box. I'll insert a picture now. There are several holes drilled into it that have these plastic inserts that hold these foam filters. Made a great improvement. The S1000 and this body style is known, the intakes for the CVT and the intake on the motor are behind the B-pillar. For some reason, the clutch, that B-pillar, I'll zoom in on it if I can. The clutch stays amazingly clean. But for whatever reason, this B-pillar back here sucks in a ton of dust. And you have to clean your filter out fairly regularly if you're riding, real bad conditions and stuff. So it was kind of nice to see those extra intakes I put in the intake box actually made a huge difference. It keeps that box a lot cleaner. Made a big difference. Again, we'll go over the back. You can see the lights, the backup lights on the rear. That way if you need to get into bed, you can see something. Here is the... Oh, I'm not done with the motor yet, though. Okay, so the power tune, stage 3 tune, cranked it up to 117 horsepower. Has the Dalton clutch kit, HunterWorks belt. It also has an Evolution Power Sports exhaust, or muffler, I should say. Runs great, sounds great. I'll give you a view here from the back so you can see those arms and stuff. Again, UHMW bushings all the way around. And here's the backup camera for the rear. You can see it. Here are the rear fender flares I built. These have the Polaris XL fender flares with some custom mud flaps I built. And you can see those are the push pins. That way if you ever got pinched against a tree, it's not going to yank the machine apart. And the Racer Tech springs on the Walkaround shocks. The boxes in the back. I think that's everything I need to cover on the outside. I'm going to hop inside here in a second and give you guys a view of starting up and all the lights and everything. But I think that's it. If I miss anything, I'll add it in. Alright, we'll do a quick video now that we're inside the cab. Show off some of the goodies. We'll do a quick start up. Set the phone down. Let's see if I can do this. Starts right up. Oh, I can't get to see it. There. I mean, if you got everything going, keep track of it. Got 144 hours, 5 hours to the next oil change, 1,354 miles. Here's some revs. Doing it, we'll hit the cameras. The cameras are tied into the ignition, so they will only work when the ignition is on. There's lifetime trail maps. It does take a second for the Wi-Fi to connect to the tablet, but once it's connected, it's instant. Front camera. So rear camera. Like I said, it takes a second for it to switch, but once it's switched, it's fine. Alright, here are your windshield washers. Let's see, clean off the mud and stuff while you're riding. Well, let's go over what else we got in here. I added the storage container. I mean, keep your cell phone, keys, valuable stuff like that in there. Whenever I remove the center console, the cup holders are wrapped with heat shield. That way your beverage doesn't get cooked when you're riding in the summertime. Got your vents up top. This is your infotainment center I built. Controls the Boss sound bar. And then this is the GMSR radio. This is hardwired in for when you're shut off. You can sit there, you can still connect to your buddies. We are inside a 30 by 40 steel building with foil covered insulation on the side, and we'll show you.
Louis. At Cincinnati, it was partly cloudy with a temperature of 45.
Still
At Louisville, it was
picks up your national or your local weather stations while you're in there.
It was 30.
These are amazing and easy. 10 to 15 miles in the mountaintops. Connect with your buddies. If somebody gets lost, you're out riding and ripping stuff, those are a blessing. I think that includes everything on the inside.